Hello and welcome to one of my favourite episodes on the TSM podcast, because today, once again, we're talking about stage shows. My name is Aidan O'Sullivan, and I am joined by my very, very good friend and incredible co-host, Mr. Ashley Green.
Was this not the one where I was supposed to be Aidan and you were supposed to be Ashley, or did you leak it and we weren't going to do it? No.
I've spoiled it. I've ruined it. I've ruined it all.
Yeah. Oh, moving on. Yes, that is right. I am your Lord and Saviour, Ashley Green, the almighty mentalist that lives down in Kent. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about one of Aidan's favourite topics. He sat there with a big old grin on his face and thinking, why did you say that? All the hate mail that's going to come in now. But yeah, stage shows. This is a real interesting one, and I'm going to throw this back to Aidan in a minute because I've seen some of the very interesting things that he thinks about when it comes to a stage show, because if you haven't have gathered already, you know, in the last two episodes we spoke about online shows and the ways in which we told you how to improve your online shows. We weren't stuck in the usual trap which people go, oh well, to improve my online shows I've got to do this better trick, I've got to do this better performance. Yes, they're relevant things, but we all know that and you don't need a half-hour podcast on it. So we talked about the other things as well with the close-up sets. Avon. There we go. I said that in one of the live streams we've done. I called you Avon. Moving on. So there you go. We're doing live streams now on TSM again, but spontaneously. So keep an eye out for them. Anyway, Aidan gave a really clear run through of how you could improve your close-up sets, and some of the advice that came out from there. Again, it was away from the tricks and the presentations. And like I said, although they are ways to improve your close-up sets, there's plenty of other ways out there, which we ran through in that. And today I feel like it's going to be very much the same, Aidan. I want to throw this to you now because I know you're going to blow the minds of everyone listening. That's right. I'm building you up here, so you better deliver. What are you doing with your shows? Because you spoke to me on a variety of different things about you want to create a real experience, a thing, like... And one of the pieces of advice you gave to one of our students was... if you could only ever do one show, what do you want people to remember you by? Like, I feel like you're going to go into some really interesting realms now, Aidan. So, Aidan, stage shows, what can you do to improve, and what are you doing?
Well, for starters, I'm writing a show.
Boom. And there we go, guys. That's the end of this episode. So I hope you've enjoyed it and learned all the interesting advice that you need to improve your stage shows. That is right. Anything else?
No, that'll do.
Perfect. Right, that's that done.
I should probably go to a bit more depth than what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So for the last few years, I have spent an awful lot of time on stage and getting on stage, trying new shows. And this is my complete, open, honest truth. I have never, ever run the same show twice. Ever. I did actually, the closest I ever came to this was actually as part of the local Fringe week that I was in. I did my show Celestial, and it went down really, really well. And so I did another show the next month called Celestial, the same show. However, about 60 to 70% of the material had changed. I completely rewrote the show. And this has been a continuous process for me over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and so on and so forth. And the reason I do that, I know this sounds bizarre for a lot of listeners, like, why don't you just want to do one show and make that the best you can? But I have spent the last few years getting completely clear and learning as much as I can about my character, myself, my presentation of magic and mentalism, my methods of magic and mentalism. Obviously, you guys that are long-term listeners will know that I'm psychological in nature, in that my methods are heavily psychological, in that I'm trying to be as real as I can be. So over the last few years, I've had no other option but to get out on stage and do this in as many different ways as I can. And as part of this process, I've been able to throw out new different types of openers. I've been able to throw out different types of closers. I've been able to throw out different sort of narratives throughout my show. I've also been able to do shows that are just trick, just to be able to see what it feels like. And just so I can really get to grips in terms of what are my preferences and what are my audience's preferences in terms of the construction of my shows, and what do they resonate with. So I do really want to sort of reel this back and say that what I'm actually doing from here onwards is that now I've got 3-4+ years worth of stage experience and stage shows under my belt. I'm now starting to write my very first show that will be my long-term show. This is the show that I'm going to be putting my heart and soul into. I don't want to say too much about it just yet, for obvious reasons that Ashley knows, but what is important is that I'm trying to make it something bigger. I don't want it to just be a show. I actually, as you mentioned, Ashley, I want it to be an experience. And this is a really good metric that I've personally found for a lot of people when they're developing a show or they want to improve their show. And my question is quite simply, if you put the word experience after your name, so it's, in my case, it would be, for performance branding, it would be the Aidan the Wizard experience, would your show live up to that name? Because the Aidan the Wizard show and the Aidan the Wizard experience sounds very, very different. An experience has much more to it. It's a bigger thing. People feel much more invested in an experience rather than just a show. And it goes back to that thing that we like talking about a lot, Ashley, in terms of stage and live performances and theatre. It's interactive. It's that it's an immersion of theatre. Whereas sort of if you just want to sit and passively like watch something, you watch Netflix or TV or some other movies or something at the cinema, because you just sit and passively engaging with it for the most part. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm writing a show and I want it to be an experience more than just a show that I can have in the long haul with all of the information to my advantage.
There's some real interesting points in there, and I think you've actually covered something which close-up workers do a lot. Whenever they want to test out material and really grow themselves, they do like these residencies, they do these gigs. I know for me, and it's like always new material, always changing and going from there, and it's a quick way to develop. And you're saying you actually do this on stage. Every stage show's different, and I guess that throws you into different environments. Like you can learn to pick up on people, like the way they react to certain things, certain lines, certain pieces of scripting in a whole variety of different ways. And now, like you say, you've actually got experience, because if you've done like a stretch of 4 years of just doing 2 or 3 shows, yeah, they're going to be great and solid, but you've 90, and like I say, you've got a real experience and a real knowledge of everything now. So I think that is a golden piece of advice which people can take straight away. What do you want to do if you want to improve? Well, maybe hop around and write a load of stage shows and do them and learn from the experience of doing different things. What about the people who have already have done that? Say if there's many Aidans out there and they're like, oh my God, I resonate with Aidan so much, I do that. Like, what advice could you give to them if they're here? And sorry to throw this on you spontaneously, but I thought it might be a question that the listeners might have.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, you don't have to take this approach. And I know a lot of performers and a lot of our friends in particular that have made a very good career out of just like one show, and they've done it very well. They change it a little bit year upon year, but the branding and everything is all the same. Whereas I've not done that. I've just been different every single time. And if anybody is sort of the same nature as me and they really want to knuckle down and get more into the stage show world, I've made the conscious decision in my own performances, in my own performing business, that stage is my future. I want to go into more stage, with long-term sort of the implications being that I only do stage shows and like tour theatres and that kind of stuff. So I got clear in terms of what it is that I wanted, and obviously you can't do a different show every single night of the same tour. It just doesn't work. You cannot do that. So my step one, after going through all those iterations and learning about what makes a good opener and what makes a good opener for me, what makes a good closer, and what makes a good closer for me, evaluate everything that you've possibly learned about these shows. Evaluate the heck out of it and work out what seemed to get a better reaction, what seemed to work better for you, what did you enjoy the most, and start using that to actually build a show. And remember, you're not just building a show, you're going to try and build an experience. And you don't have to call it an experience. I don't want every magic show in the world to then start being called the Ashley Green experience or the Aidan the Wizard experience, or the that's not the point. That's just sort of an exercise to make you test whether or not your show is actually good enough, if you like. But that's my process. That's what I'm doing now. I'm evaluating my material, and I've got an idea of what I want to my next show to be. I know what I want my reviews to say. I know what I want people to be thinking about and talking about when describing me and my show. I'm now just pulling from all of my knowledge in terms of structure and narratives and my behavior on stage, and learning from all of that and actually putting it into something that I can start then repeating the process with in terms of the frequent and rapid adaptations. But I'm going to be trying to do it in such a way that the show itself is the same, and it's all the other stuff, the sprinklings, if you like, that are going to change.
Yeah. And there is another point that I want to bring up as well, which is something which you've been thinking about and you've been telling me about quite a bit. And that is, I guess, the production value that comes with a show. And I know a lot of people are going to be watching or listening, watching with your ears. They're going to be listening to this podcast and they're thinking, I mainly do shows in like village halls and function rooms. There's really only few people out there who actually do like the big arena shows and the big theatre shows. And this advice is actually going to be a little bit easier for them because everything's there. You've got the lighting rig, you've got the ability to use all their technical stuff like the music and the curtains and all the other jazz that you know about, Aidan. But the people who do like the function rooms and just like halls and all of that, adding that bit of production value, like playing with lighting. Can they bring their own production, like lighting rig if that's a thing that they can do? And also, is there a way of adding music? Like, if there isn't an opportunity, if there's no, like, speakers in the hall, well, can they, because you can buy stuff online, like, buying, like, the speakers and actually running it yourself? Because you said to me, like, you put music in your show, it's the best way to evoke emotion. And when you're doing a stage show like this, a big thing where you're trying to captivate people, adding these elements in is something which is really going to take it to the next level.
Completely. Production value is the most important thing. I think it... Again, I might change my mind on this fact, but I would argue that your production value is actually more important than a fantastic show. I would rather do a mediocre show with immense production value, because that's the stuff that people are going to remember. They're going to remember the amount that went into it, even if they're not paying over attention to it. So you spoke about a few things, and I really want to sort of decode those. And again, we spoke about stage shows early last year. So again, I'll make sure to link previous episodes on this subject so people can jump back and hear a bit more about maybe where to start with the stage shows in that sense. But production value is incredibly important. And for those that are just doing those village halls or those little rent-a-room kind of things, that's fine. You can do a solid stage show there. My first ever stage show was literally in a sports hall of a local youth centre, in which all of the I'm not even lying here, every single one of the promotional photos, either you can see the basketball court on the floor, or up in the corner on the wall is a basketball hoop. You can see it. Ashley's laughing because he's seen the photos. It really doesn't need to do much. And all we did there for that show, the production value, because I knew it was going to be so important. We'll talk about this in a minute, but first things first, I brought in a tech team to come and do the tech for me, so I didn't have to worry about that. But all we did is we turned the whole room lights off. We got some massive spotlights at the back of the room pointing straight towards me, and we had some coloured, like purple coloured lights just shining up onto the brick wall behind me, albeit one of them was illuminating a basketball hoop again, but it looked good because they as the audience came into the room, it was dark, they could see the lights, and it was a really dramatic it really felt good. And because I had my certain playlist playing in the background quite loud, I was getting people into this this mood, and I was using what I resonate with the most, and that's music, to evoke the emotion and get people thinking what I need them to think. So to boil this back down to lay people terms, if you like, you don't need to get a tech team. Luckily, the tech team was just friends of mine, so they literally did the entire event free of charge just because they got bored. But the idea there is that I gave them the opportunity to test their stuff to make me look good. I didn't have to pay a penny for the tech. I just used what I had, and the reality of the situation is that you don't even need that. If you don't even need a stage, like a raised platform. You can literally just do it on the floor. Just make sure that you've got an opportunity and a bit of space for you to stand in front of people in some way. And that's really all you need. You can add bits and pieces later on, but I would argue that the first thing that you should add, as you said, Ashley, is that music. And it's the thing that I'm always trying. Those that know me know that I resonate most with music, and I'm a heavily musical person. Not that I play or anything. I'm relearning piano, but I'm really sort of inspired by lots of music, and I listen to so much music because I know that every so often I hear something and I'm like, oh my gosh, that gives me an idea for a show. We actually spoke about this with Tom Elderfield. Like, he listens to the Now You See Me theme just like I do, and think, what could I do to this music? What trick could I do that would fit this music? And when you start looking at it like that, you can get some material, and then almost automatically you find the music that goes with it. So again, I don't want to keep waffling about all of this stuff, but it really is something that you can add over time. You just work out the bare minimum and step by step it. Hey there guys, it's Aidan here from the Successful Mentalist podcast, just interrupting for a quick second to say thanks for listening. No, of course, if you have just got a few moments, bring out your phones, whack the little subscribe button on. Yep, you know, the one that says subscribe, just press that button. And again, you're going to get updates from every time that we drop a new episode. You'll get those notifications straight into your mobile device or wherever you're listening to us. And again, it'll help boost our stats and get us out to more magicians and entertainers across the world, which is exactly what we want. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to go back to the podcast now, but make sure you subscribe.
Yeah, you said something as well, which you touched on, but I want to elaborate on. You said, all the photos that were taken. That is a crucial point of how people can improve, because, you know, if you've listened to the past 2 episodes, you'll start to get a sense that the advice we're sharing kind of can be shared around to the other elements. Like, you can take the advice from online shows and apply it to the stage show. You can take the advice from this and apply it to online shows and close-up. And the advice we previously shared, like on online shows, was going through the entire process and talking about like the ways that clients contact you, go into it, and how they go through that entire kind of funnel to get to you. And what you've said, Aidan, actually resonates with that point. If you get in a stage show, if you're booking a stage show, make sure you bring a photographer with you, because you can get some really good promo photos where you can use these for marketing materials for your next show. You can use it on social media, video as well. You can get a show reel of everything. And this is one of the things that we thought about with our tour. Like, we've actually put that in place. It's like, right, what do we need to do to sell tickets? I know, let's do a show here, and we're going to film it, and we're going to get this show reel in place, and then we've got that. We're going to have the photos of us performing on stage, and then we can use that in the marketing materials to then go forward inadvertently, like we've said in the past few episodes. That improves your show as well, because all of the other things that are in place, the bits around the show, that, like I said before, that framework.
Completely. It's really important to pay attention to that other stuff, because I mean, most people have been to a theatre, a live theatre, or even a cinema, or seen a movie, right? When you're watching a movie, you're not just watching 2 people have a conversation, or 3, or a group of people have a conversation. You're seeing things from different angles with different camera shots. There's also music and background noise actually happening to help you buy into what you're watching. You're also, like, sometimes if you're watching it in a cinema and stuff, you've got it in such a way that you can feel the music, like it's loud. Like, I went to see Inception a few weeks ago as a part of months ago, as part of the 10-year anniversary of that movie. And one of the things that amazed me in there was that the music was bloody loud. I felt it in my bones. I was like, oh my God, I feel so much like a part of this. And again, that's a simple conscious decision made by the production to actually do this, so that you can evoke that emotion. And it's all of these other things that you pay attention to when you're watching. Like, you go and see Les Mis, you don't just see some people sat warbling around on stage. You actually see, for the most part, you see people in costume, first of all, on a set, another point, singing to a actual, often live band or live music. And it's all of these little things that you're paying attention to, because it would suck if it's just a bunch of people walk out in blooming trainers and a tracksuit. Everyone's just all out in the same trainers and tracksuit, just empty stage, nothing like that. So imagine your show is like that. Imagine until you start adding this stuff that can take your show to the next level, you are walking out in just sheet white clothes and some trainers. People aren't going to be interested in some generic guy walking out with sheet white clothes and trainers unless that is a conscious decision. Now, I've seen some performers, and I'm gonna name Nate Staniforth here. He actually doesn't walk out in like white clothes and trainers. That's just a figure of my imagination. But what he does is something really, really profound in that he has literally nothing on stage. He doesn't have a load of props and a load of tools and a load of things. He just walks out on stage and he harnesses that silence. And I know that I've just been spending the last God knows how long talking about you need music, 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 music. But sometimes the absence of production value can actually be production value in and of itself. But the point I'm really trying to make, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, is that you need to make a conscious decision about what it is that you're putting in, whether that's music, lighting, sound, guys, and all that kind of stuff. Just make that decision and stick to it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you've made there, and I'm so glad you've brought that up, because even going through this, I was so focused on saying, yeah, this, and this, but, it did escape my mind that, stripping it back to that, to the real minimalism, like sometimes for some people, in some moments, that can be powerful, harnessing the power of silence, which we know, like when I've done parlour shows, it's paid off. Like one of the ways which a subtle improvement, I improved my shows last year, the venue I was working at, it was obviously a bar and people are drinking, and I started to notice that sometimes people would talk, like when I'm doing a parlour show. So instead of talking louder, I harnessed the power of silence and I stopped and I quietened my voice, and then they suddenly went, oh, what's happening? I can't hear him. So sometimes that can be really powerful, like in what you said, like capturing a moment and, in my essence, making people be quiet. So depending on what you want to use it for, like play around with that, which is really interesting. But there still are some last little things which we can mention here, things that we're actually working on, things that we're currently doing, and things which, if you guys haven't have heard the subtle hints that have been kind of happening over the past few months of us running the TSM podcast, me and Aidan haven't just been working together on TSM, we've actually been working together in our own performance careers, on our own other businesses together. And we're actually putting a tour together. It was supposed to go ahead 2021, but COVID happened and it moved everything back to the foreseeable. So we're expecting this 2022 now, roughly, give or take. But we're putting a show together and we have done a lot of things to do that. And part of them is getting a team together, like you said, a tech team and a stage manager, someone that can guide us through the process. We have brought in someone else. We're now picking their brains, their knowledge, everything they've trained in, and we're using that to our advantage to improve the quality of our shows by getting someone else in.
It's incredibly powerful. I'm going to admit from the get-go, a lot of people this won't resonate with, and people won't get it, or people just won't like it. But having somebody who understands that world more than you is profound. Or even just somebody that understands that world equally as well, or perhaps even less well. Basically what I'm saying here is that you can work with somebody who knows about that field, because in our case, our team are laymen. They know a little bit about magic because they've got natural interests in it, and obviously they've known us for a while. They've known me for years. So in this case, they're able to understand a little bit, but they're mostly watching my show, and also I say my shows because I'm working with them separately as well. But they're going to be watching our show from a layperson's perspective, and they're going to see things that like us as magicians won't understand, but lay people will spot. And they'll be able to watch our show and think, oh, okay, that was cool. Maybe what we could do is whack a spotlight when you're doing that bit. Or maybe what we could do is actually play some music. Or that music was a little bit too loud. Let's make sure that it's a little quieter. And all of these little things that you get from an outsider's perspective are so good at really rapidly elevating your shows. I mean, I will admit, I think there's only ever been 2 or 3 shows that I've done in the past few years that I've not worked with other people to help actually write them. And these have been a combination of lay people, magicians, and also lay people that have a knowledge like magicians. It's like that weird in-betweeners stance. And they've mostly just been friends. Friends that I've told from the get-go, I need you to be brutally honest with me. If this trick sucks, you have to tell me. If this trick is good, you have to tell me. And if there is anything that feels weird or you think could be done better, or even something that would make this entire routine or show 10 times more impossible, don't worry about trying to work out the how, just tell me the details. And they can fill in all the blanks. But again, I do want to just go back to the specifics of a tech team, of a team that know this stuff, because they're going to take a lot of your stress away. For me, when I first started adding music to my shows, I was stressed about, oh my God, I'm going to have to press play and then run away and then have to go back and press play and then turn it down and all of that stuff. Since then, I've actually invested in it's like a little pocket remote kind of thing. I can't remember the name, but it's like a little pocket remote that allows me to play my music from my belt or from inside my pocket. So it's easy and it's off my mind. I don't need to panic. It's all just done naturally. But equally, I've worked with other people, as I said, that just do that stuff for me. And that's what's going to help. If you've got other people doing the production stuff, it means you can just focus on your show.
Yeah, it's profound. Like, there's so much which you can take from that. And I think the elements of what you've said, like, again, like I keep saying stuff and then you keep saying stuff and it goes in this weird thing and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. And this is one of those other points, like just having a layman in the audience, like, heck, what we said about shows in village halls or little rooms that you can rent. Get a layman in the audience to give you feedback afterwards. Get one of your friends and they do the job, which is what our tech team's doing. But yeah, exactly as you said, like, outsource as much as possible so you can really knuckle down and focus on the performance. If you can do that, then it's a real game changer. And you know, some of the other things which we've been focusing on our tour is everything we've mentioned. Like, we thought about music, we thought about like the posters, the designs, the marketing. We even knuckled down and went, where do we want, which theatres look cool, which ones would suit? Because do you remember, Aidan, in our process of looking around for theatres, we were looking at stages and thinking, this one probably isn't going to be best for us on that show. And that's another important thing to think about. Like, maybe the reasons why your theatre shows aren't as good as they could be, it might just be the environment you're performing in. Is it a stage where people are like, you're basically out there and the stage goes around you, so people are looking in from the side and head on, and some people may be looking slightly like behind you, like, and you're having to play around the room, and they might be seeing how some tricks work because it's not angle proof. They might not be able to see you all the time. Like, your environment might actually need changing, and that might improve the show itself. And this is one of the things that we looked into a lot. And exactly what you mentioned a while ago, the set design, the music, every single thing around that has been one of the things which it's really been an eye-opener for me, I've got to be honest. Like, the amount of detail that goes in before you do a show. But it kind of resembles with a lot of stuff we said about close-up. Like, every point we've made there, where, when, in close-up, you can apply that to the stage shows as well. So really, really some interesting advice. And I'm so glad to be working on this project with you, Aidan, because, guys, if you haven't have guessed already, like, Aidan's mind is brilliant when it comes to this stuff. At this point in the episode, Aidan, we are getting to the end. So I think it's well worth saying, guys, the cat's out of the bag now. We've been official. We've let you know that we're doing a tour. If you've got any places which you think would be good for us, drop us a message, let us know. Feel free to email us at thesuccessfulmentalist@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got any theatre recommendations, you know anywhere, you know where to come, because we are desperate and looking for somewhere to take our show. Aidan, One last chance to throw it back to you. Anything you want to mention for today?
I think the reality of the situation is just that production value should not be overlooked. If you want to do a good stage show, make sure that you've got something that you're confident with. And I think that's a point that I forgot to mention at the start when I said I do 1,000,001 different shows. I'm confident performing all of those, and that is part of a personal trait. I am a naturally confident performer, so I got lucky in that sense. But you can train confidence, and I'm sure that we'll share information about this at a different point. But the reality of the situation is that it's only as complicated as you make it. You can go out and do a stage tour in village halls. Hey, it's cheap. It's a cheap option most places. So just find out what it is that you want to do. Get clear on that intention behind it. And as Ashley said, if you want to really go deep, ask yourself the 5 whys and the how, and check back to last week's episode for more info on that. But yeah, hopefully we'll see many of you listeners actually on the tour. I'm really, really excited. We're hoping to do a few mini exclusive dates this year at some point, ready for the big tour next year. But until then, nothing else from me.
Perfect. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will see you next week. And I have to say, Aidan, it's going to be that thing. I'm going to say it again. This might be my favourite special guest yet. We've said every time, but genuinely, this isn't a magician or a mentalist that we've got on the podcast. This is a serial entrepreneur, someone who is absolutely fantastic, runs multiple businesses, but we got him on because he has a business all about speaking, public speaking. So with that in mind, I'm sure you can understand where this podcast might have gone, but you probably won't have guessed the angle in which it went about, but it's going to directly apply and benefit you when it comes to improving your online shows, your close-up shows, or your stage shows. Every single advice that Eric Edmees is about to share in next week's episode, it will be a game changer. Anything you do in the art of mentalism or magic, even speaking to people on the phone or in a Zoom call, bang, it'll improve that. So, guys, I say it all the time, but I'm looking forward to this because it's my favourite episode yet. It was my favourite person I've ever interviewed. I'll see you next week. We'll see you soon, and stay safe.